There is a huge difference between an ordinary week and a week that changes the course of an entire month. When analyzing the astrological movements that mark the period from August 3rd to 9th, it became clear that we are not facing isolated days, but rather the beginning of a sequence of events that tends to gain intensity as we approach eclipse season. It feels as though August is already accelerating processes that have been in preparation for quite some time. The sky this week sends a very clear message. What remained unresolved during July is unlikely to stay stagnant. Decisions begin to mature, pending situations move toward a resolution, and projects that seem stuck find much better conditions to move forward. Not because everything will resolve itself automatically, but because the prevailing energy shifts from favoring only reflection to encouraging action. The week still begins under the influence of the full moon in Aries. In astrology, every full moon represents culmination, answers, and the closing of cycles. In Aries, this symbolism gains speed. Issues that were waiting for a resolution may finally find a way forward. People who have been postponing important decisions might feel that it no longer makes sense to keep waiting. This moment favors action, initiative, and the courage to resolve what can no longer remain undefined. At the same time, this very energy calls for attention to another aspect. Aries amplifies impulsiveness. During such periods, the tendency to respond quickly, act before thinking, or let small irritations take on greater proportions than they actually have increases. This week favors action but not rashness. There is an important difference between acting with determination and acting purely on impulse. Another point worth noting is that August does not begin in isolation. Several configurations this week serve as preparation for the eclipses that will occur in the coming days. This detail is extremely relevant because eclipses rarely produce effects only at the exact moment they occur. It is quite common for their first signs to appear days earlier through unexpected changes, seemingly small events, or decisions that will later reveal a much greater impact than initially seemed. The script itself highlights that this week already anticipates the atmosphere of eclipse season. While observing these configurations, another pattern began to emerge. August tends to bring to light precisely what has remained hidden over the past few months. Structural issues, both in people's lives and in the collective scenario, begin to show their weaknesses. What has solid foundations tends to endure. What was already showing signs of wear may start to demand deeper changes. This interpretation appears in different ways in the two scripts analyzed, although each one emphasizes different aspects of this process. On a collective level, it is worth noting that periods like this tend to increase the number of significant events involving governments, the economy, infrastructure, technology, and natural phenomena. Not because there is a specific prediction for a single event, but because important astrological concentrations often coincide with moments when different matters accelerate at the same time. It is precisely this simultaneity that often gives the impression that the entire world has started to change its pace. On a personal level, however, the main message seems to be different. This week favors those who are willing to break out of stagnation. Projects that have remained only in the planning stage now find better conditions to get started. Difficult conversations are likely to take place. Long-awaited answers may finally emerge. And what once seemed distant slowly begins to take shape. This does not mean the absence of challenges. It simply means that the sky no longer favors prolonged waiting and instead encourages decisions. There is still one aspect that I find especially interesting. Many people believe that major changes only happen when something extraordinary occurs. Astrology usually reveals a different process. First, the energy changes, then the circumstances change. Only then do events become visible to everyone. It is exactly this sequence that seems to mark the beginning of August. Even before the eclipses arrive, the environment already begins to show signs of reorganization. That is why I consider this one of the most important weeks of the entire first half of the second semester, not only because of what may happen between Monday and Sunday, but also because several events that begin now are likely to continue having effects throughout the rest of August. In other words, this week does not just mark the beginning of a new month. It serves as the gateway to a period that promises to be one of the most intense and transformative of 2026. If Monday and Tuesday are marked by responses and movement, starting on Wednesday, the energy of the week changes completely in character. It is precisely at this moment that the moon leaves its full phase and enters the waning phase, beginning a process that, at first glance, may seem like a slowdown. But when we look at this configuration more closely, we realize that it conveys a very different message. This is not the time to stop. It's the time to let go of what is preventing the next step. The waning moon occurs in Taurus, and this detail makes all the difference. Taurus is a sign associated with stability, security, comfort, and maintaining what we already know. When the moon enters the waning phase precisely in this sign, it seems to ask, what are you still holding on to just because you've gotten used to it? What remains in your life not because it still makes sense, but simply because it seems more comfortable not to change? This may be one of the strongest messages of the entire week. Many people tend to interpret the waning moon only as a period of endings, but in this case, it goes beyond that. It shows that in order to grow, you need to make room. It's not possible to start a new phase while carrying all the burdens of the previous one. Some habits will need to be left behind. Certain routines will no longer keep up with the pace of changes that August is beginning to bring. And in some cases, the biggest obstacle to growth won't be an external difficulty, but rather the attachment to what should have already been overcome. While this energy is at work on a personal level, another important movement is starting to gain strength in the sky. The approach of eclipse season makes every decision made now much more significant. It's as if the week serves as a period of preparation. The eclipses haven't happened yet, but their first effects are slowly beginning to appear. Small events from this week may reveal, in the coming weeks, a much greater significance than they seem to have right now. The script itself draws attention to the fact that the effects of eclipses are often felt before the exact date on which they occur. Another interesting aspect is that this change of phase also favors an internal reorganization. Many people may feel the need to reassess their priorities, cut back on excesses, and focus their energy only on what truly has growth potential. Instead of trying to solve everything at once, the tendency becomes to choose more carefully where to invest time, effort, and attention. This clarity usually arises precisely when we understand that not every battle is worth continuing to fight. In the collective scenario, this same logic can also be observed. Old structures begin to reveal weaknesses that had remained hidden for a long time. Issues related to infrastructure, the functioning of institutions, and even environmental conditions tend to become more prominent. The second script emphasizes precisely that periods close to eclipses often coincide with news involving structural vulnerabilities, natural phenomena, and situations that expose existing points of tension. This does not mean that all events should be interpreted as something negative. Often a structure reveals its flaws precisely so that it can be fixed before facing greater challenges. This is an important characteristic of this period. What comes to light may represent a problem, but it can also be an opportunity for strengthening. Thursday adds a new layer to this analysis with one of the week's most harmonious movements, Venus entering Libra. In astrology, Venus is at home in this sign, meaning it acts with great naturalness. This configuration usually favors relationships, negotiations, agreements, reconciliations, and everything that depends on balance between different interests. After days marked by decisions and closures, a much more favorable moment arises to rebuild bridges, resolve conflicts, and seek solutions through dialogue. Beyond the realm of relationships, Venus in Libra also has significant effects on financial and professional matters. We're not talking about a sudden change in the economy, but rather a gradual trend towards stabilization. Projects that depend on cooperation find a more favorable environment. Partnerships become more productive, and activities related to creativity, aesthetics, communication, and negotiation also tend to gain momentum during this period. This influence will not be limited to just this week. It will continue to be present throughout much of August. Another very positive movement occurs when the Sun forms a trine with Saturn. This configuration combines enthusiasm and responsibility, creativity and discipline. It's an excellent time to start projects that have the potential for lasting growth. There is a very favorable energy for building something solid, as long as there is commitment to continuity. It's not enough to just get started. The sky favors those who are able to maintain consistency, rhythm, and dedication. The basic script reinforces exactly this idea by highlighting that Saturn in Aries favors structures built with speed, initiative, and continuous action rather than excessive delay. When we look at all these movements together, it becomes clear that the week is not just about endings, nor just about new beginnings. It represents a carefully constructed transition. First come the answers, then come the decisions. Next, opportunities for reorganization and growth appear. All of this sets the stage for something much bigger, because the final stretch of the week and the approach of the eclipses still hold movements capable of significantly changing the course of August. After the reorganization brought about by the waning moon and the change of pace that begins on Thursday, the week enters a different phase. The feeling is no longer one of preparation. Gradually, the first effects of the decisions made earlier begin to appear. It is precisely at this moment that the sky seems to test what has truly been built with consistency and what was still relying only on the expectation that everything would resolve itself. On Friday, the moon leaves Taurus and enters Gemini, still in its waning phase. This detail completely changes the type of lesson the sky proposes. If before the focus was on leaving comfort zones behind, now the attention turns to the way we use our communication. Gemini rules over words, information, conversations, movement, and the speed at which ideas circulate. When the waning moon passes through this sign, it seems to offer a very clear invitation: speak less and observe more. During times like these, not every piece of information deserves an immediate response, nor does every provocation require a reaction. There is a natural tendency for rumors to spread, hasty interpretations to occur, and misunderstood conversations to cause unnecessary strain. That's why Friday favors those who choose to analyze before acting much more. At a time so close to the eclipses, small misunderstandings can take on much greater proportions than they normally would. This characteristic is also reflected on the global stage. Important information may emerge over these days, but not all of it will immediately reveal its full scope. Some news may seem isolated when first reported, only to show days later that it was part of a much larger context. This is usually a typical hallmark of pre-eclipse periods. Events start to appear before people are able to understand how they are connected. Another interesting aspect highlighted in the second script is that weeks like this tend to expose already existing vulnerabilities. Not necessarily because new problems are arising, but because situations that had remained hidden start to become more visible. Issues involving infrastructure, natural phenomena, the functioning of essential services, and even systems considered very secure may show signs of wear or the need for review. The script relates this period to increased attention to old structures and their weak points. On Saturday, this energy remains very similar. The moon stays in Gemini, maintaining the invitation to intellectual retreat and careful observation. Contrary to what many people think, growth does not always mean acting all the time. There are moments when the greatest demonstration of maturity is precisely choosing where to invest your energy and, above all, where not to waste it. This is a week in which discernment is worth more than speed. At the same time, August continues to show that it will be an extremely active month. The eclipses are approaching quickly and are beginning to create an atmosphere of anticipation. The first eclipse will happen just a few days after the end of this week, and that's why many astrologers consider this period a kind of preparation corridor. The main script highlights exactly this point. The first signs of the eclipse may start to be noticed about a week before the phenomenon itself. This means that events that begin now may gain enormous importance over the coming days. When Sunday arrives, a new change takes place. The moon enters Cancer, once again changing the atmosphere of the week. After days marked by decisions, organization, and reflection, there arises a much greater need to strengthen bonds, look at our own foundations, and understand where we truly find security. At the same time, Mercury enters Leo, ushering in a period when communication, creativity, and personal expression become much stronger. This configuration favors people who want to present projects, take on leadership roles, or simply communicate their ideas with more confidence. Mercury in Leo also changes the way we think. There is a greater tendency to value our own convictions, our talents, and our capacity for initiative. When used well, this movement strengthens self-esteem, creativity, and clarity in communication. The only precaution needed is to avoid letting self-confidence turn into excessive pride or difficulty in listening to different opinions. Looking at this entire sequence, one conclusion becomes almost inevitable. This week was not designed to produce a single extraordinary event. It was designed to reorganize the ground before a much more intense period. Monday and Tuesday brought answers. Wednesday showed what needed to be ended. Thursday made room for new opportunities. Friday and Saturday taught us to better choose where to invest our energy. And Sunday begins to prepare the mind and emotions for everything that August still intends to reveal. That is precisely why I consider this just the beginning. The true intensity of August is yet to come. The eclipses will represent the next major chapter of this movement, accelerating changes that have already begun quietly during this week and that will, most likely, continue to influence important decisions throughout the rest of the month. There is a reason why so many astrologers pay such close attention to the first week of August. It's not just because of the configurations that occur between Monday and Sunday. It's because when this week ends, there are only a few days left until the first eclipse of the month. And anyone who has followed astrology for a long time knows that eclipses rarely begin to take effect only at the exact moment they occur. Very often, their effects start to be noticed days beforehand, through events that at first seem ordinary, but later turn out to be extremely important. The base script itself highlights that the signs of the eclipse can already start to appear about a week before it occurs. This may be the main message of this week. Pay attention to what begins now. Some conversations may seem like just another conversation. A seemingly simple decision could completely change the coming months. An unexpected encounter could open doors that we can't even imagine today. In the same way, situations that seemed under control may reveal weaknesses that have remained hidden for quite some time. This period acts as a kind of announcement of what August intends to develop with much greater intensity. Another important aspect is that this will not be a month with only one eclipse. The base script explains that August brings together two eclipses in different axes, something that significantly increases the number of themes activated at the same time. Instead of concentrating transformations in just one area of life, this configuration tends to provoke simultaneous changes in different sectors. That is precisely why so many people may feel that various aspects of their lives begin to change almost at the same time. When this happens, the natural tendency is to look for a single explanation for everything, but astrology usually reveals a more complex scenario. Major cycles do not transform just one issue. They reorganize priorities, change relationships, alter professional plans, modify the way we see opportunities, and even the way we deal with things that once seemed definitive. It is this silent reorganization that seems to be beginning now. The second script also draws attention to another interesting point. Periods close to eclipses tend to highlight situations that were already building up tension. Old structures may show signs of wear. Environmental issues continue to demand attention. Important infrastructures may once again become the focus of discussions. The script also mentions a tendency for increased attention to natural phenomena and structural vulnerabilities during August, associating these themes with the eclipse period. On the international stage, it is also worth observing movements involving governments, the economy, technology, and major political decisions. Not because there is a specific prediction for a particular event, but because significant astrological concentrations often coincide with moments when different issues gain momentum simultaneously. Many decisions made now may have much greater consequences in the coming weeks. On a personal level, the main lesson may be something else. August seems to favor those who can adapt quickly. People who are excessively attached to the past may find it more difficult to keep up with the pace of change. On the other hand, those who are open to revising plans, learning new things, and seizing opportunities tend to get through this period much more easily. The sky does not seem to encourage resistance, it encourages movement. There is also a very interesting detail observed in the base script. Mercury in Leo, which began on Sunday, favors a rediscovery of one's own identity. This is a period when many people start to look again at their talents, their goals, and what they truly want to build. Instead of living only in response to external expectations, the desire to take greater control over one's own life grows. This change in attitude may seem subtle at first, but it usually produces significant effects over the following weeks. When we bring all these configurations together, the impression that remains is very clear. August does not arrive bringing just events. It ushers in a sequence of transformations that will continue to evolve far beyond this first week. The sky seems to slowly remove what has already fulfilled its purpose, while creating space for completely new experiences. Some changes will be planned, others will arise unexpectedly, but almost all of them will have something in common. They will require adaptation. Perhaps this is exactly the greatest lesson of this analysis. We are not just entering another month in the astrological calendar. We are approaching a period in which important decisions, unexpected opportunities, and changes in direction may happen at a much faster pace than we saw during July. Those who understand the signs from the beginning will probably be able to get through this period with much more awareness. And that is precisely why it is worth paying close attention to the coming weeks, because everything indicates that this first week of August does not represent the peak of the transformations. It represents only the moment when the sky quietly begins to move the first pieces of a cycle that promises to deeply shape the rest of 2026.